Jay-Z is scrambling. A new criminal investigation against Diddy just started, and Diddy is getting ready to snitch. Jaguar Wright and Gene Deal have both confirmed that Diddy was not working alone. And now the Los Angeles Police Department is looking into any partners that might have been involved with Diddy.
There's a lot of negative stuff around Jay-Z right now, which is clearly damaging to him.
Yeah, and I think there's like a famous quote from someone who was acquitted, and he said, all right, where do I go to get my reputation back?
Right.
I mean, social media was a light. Beyonce's next, Jay-Z's next, all the people in Inner Circle is next.
Yeah, and the problem is there are just so many pictures of the two of them partying together, and it clearly was at a load of Diddy parties.
There are more than 100 civil cases filed against Diddy, and this LA investigation is just the first one to officially turn criminal. Diddy's sentencing wasn't the end of his story. It was only the beginning of his real downfall. Diddy is not planning to go down alone. He's already made it clear. If he goes down, he's dragging every single person who is involved down with him.
John Combs now facing new sexual assault allegations, this time from a man in Florida. According to ABC News, investigators in LA received a report from a police department in Florida where the alleged victim lives, and now they are working on the case. Eyewitness News anchor Mike Marza in the newsroom with the very latest details. Mike.
Well, David, here's what we know. The new allegations of sexual assault against Sean Diddy Combs come from a music producer who went to police in Florida, but the alleged crimes happened in Los Angeles. Jonathan Hay is his name. That's the person who filed the complaint, and he's one of the John Does that filed a civil lawsuit against Combs in July. The first alleged incident was in September of 2020 in LA. Hay alleging that Combs performed sex acts in front of him and asked for oral sex. In a second incident, in 2021, Hay claims that C.J. Wallace, the son of the rapper Notorious B.I.G., took him to a location where two men put something over his head, he says, before Combs forced himself on Hay several times. Combs is currently serving out a sentence in Fort Dix, New Jersey, following his conviction earlier this year on two prostitution-related charges. Combs' representatives have not yet responded to this lawsuit.
Jay-Z has already replaced Diddy, and the freak-offs haven't stopped. They just have someone new at the helm. Diddy was never the mastermind. It was Jay-Z who was controlling everything from behind the scenes, and now, with Diddy gone, he's finally stepping out from the shadows and taking control of the empire he helped build.
This ain't even about Diddy. It's about the rest of them. Do you know they're still having white parties?
And whose honor? What?
Yeah, they're still having white parties. Michael Rubin is throwing them now. You know the guy that
we've heard those stories.
Bunny hops for?
Yeah, little baby. We've heard some stories. Yeah, we've seen the bunny hop.
You know who he's cool with, right? Who he's very close with? Mr. Carter. So we went from Diddy's camp throwing the white parties to now the Jigga Man's camp is throwing the white parties. Interesting.
Diddy's sentencing was never going to stop this. Diddy was just one of the criminals involved in this. His trial was a distraction meant to give the public a villain to focus on, while the real masterminds kept their hands clean. But now that Diddy's civil cases are being investigated, it's becoming increasingly clear that Diddy wasn't working alone. The more investigators dig into Diddy, the more fingerprints they're finding that don't belong to him.
Like, that's the thing, this trial, the sentencing, the verdict, all the hyperbole, all of the pomp and circumstance, all of this, all of that, it means nothing. It means nothing. This was all done for the public's entertainment. This was all done to get people like me to be quiet. This was all done to give weirdos like Vladimir Lyuski and Torre the ability to constantly challenge and try to check my veracity, my actuality, my truth, and to get the public to not believe whistleblowers like me. That's why this was done. This ain't even about Diddy.
The victims never got the justice they deserved, and they're not going to get it, not until everyone that was involved with Diddy is behind bars. One arrest isn't justice. Not when there are eyewitnesses that confirm how some of the most powerful figures in entertainment were with Diddy during his freak-offs, giving orders, covering tracks, and making sure the cycle continued. And that's the part nobody wants to talk about. Diddy wasn't operating alone.
Does Cassie get justice in all this? Does that look like...
Still not enough. Still not enough. And it's wild because she's getting such a better deal than dear Lee Cordell Smith is.
30 million and your perpetrator gets 50 months? I mean...
Still not enough.
Jeez.
Her life is never going to be the same. And people are going to find ways to make her life complicated, to force her to have to spend that 30 million every way they possibly can. You know, there is no up. There is no win. Haven't I been saying that?
There was video footage that showed Jay-Z, Usher, Kevin Hart, and Diddy all at a freak-off party. But for some reason, no one else even got subpoenaed. This trial was a joke from start to finish. The feds had tons of evidence, but they never presented any of it. Even the evidence that they did present was ignored, and no charges were filed. Diddy had guns and drugs in his room on the day of his arrest, but there were never any drug or gun charges filed.
There's a woman, what is it called? Sprout to Success or something like that? Some kind of charter school, private, independent private school in Miami Gardens, which is right there in the area of South Florida where he's been warden for Satan of. Because he ain't nothing but a shepherd for the devil. But she was going to invite him to come to the school to speak to her students there, K through 12. Yeah. You want to know what I find really interesting? All of these people that wanted to bring him to schools and bring him to this and bring him to that. How the hell are they going to do that when he's on the SEX offenders registry list? He's not allowed to be around kids.
That does make moving a little hard.
He's not allowed to be around schools. He's on the registry. Didn't I already do a tutorial about the registry? Like, I don't know. He is a registered SEX offender, and people want to bring him to school.
So far, only one of the civil cases against Diddy has triggered a criminal investigation. But as prosecutors start digging through the evidence in the other cases, things are going to get a lot messier. Because once they see the overlap, the same names, the same locations, the same patterns, they're not going to be able to ignore it anymore. Diddy's 4-year sentence is only a trailer of what's coming.
Being long, they say with points and time served and any type of... He might be out by Christmas next year.
People say a lot of things. You know what else they said? They said he was going to get bail. How did that work? You know what else they said at the end of that trial? Even after he was found guilty of the Mann Act, they was putting together a 4th of July party. How did that work? People say a lot of things, don't they? I guess they don't hear God say no. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I'm not even trying to guess. What I am praying for, though, is that real victims and real survivors actually get the attention that they deserve, that they get the justice that they deserve. I'm praying that Derek is going to be able to get out of jail. I'm hoping that the interview that I do with him will be able to get enough traction.
There is physical evidence tying Diddy, Jay-Z, and everyone else who was involved to their crimes. And just like Cassie's civil suit, the allegations and evidence in the civil trial are enough to start a criminal proceeding. This is why Diddy was so quick to settle with Cassie. One day after her case was filed, Diddy settled. He knew that his empire would collapse if a federal investigation started. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm hoping that the other 100 civil cases will not just be left at civil cases and will actually be turned to criminal cases, because they should be, because I got a big issue with everyone thinking that money is the end all be all into stopping a predator from operating. It is not.
Amen.
It is not. Why do so many of these cases stay civil? Why aren't they turned criminal when there's criminal acts all through the pages?
Can you file a criminal charge and still get money off of a camera? Like, can you sue later, or is it strictly victims looking for money?
Simpson's family, OJ was acquitted and they was able to take him to civil court and get him for bread. It really doesn't matter which way you do it.
That is true.
It can go either way. A civil proceeding and a criminal proceeding is just two different proceedings. But if you have criminal acts in a civil proceeding, just because someone gets paid or it gets settled and people get paid out, it doesn't mean that those acts shouldn't be tried criminally.
The people closest to Diddy saw this coming years ago, before the investigation ever began and before the public ever knew what was happening behind closed doors. Gene Deal and Jaguar Wright have been saying this for years. Diddy and Jay-Z are two sides of the same coin. Gene Deal has said that Jay-Z is just as violent as Diddy. The only difference is that Jay-Z is quieter and smarter.
Diddy always been the type of individual that wanted to have ups on the next person no matter what they was doing. He did the stuff to Ja Rule so he could go after Jay-Z. They not gonna come out and speak on nothing that has anything to do with them, and they praying that they not on the tape doing crazy stuff, being oiled up in the whole 9 yards. Until the feds say, hey, yo, listen here. Hey, buddy, we got you on this tape, and girl looked like she was pretty young. We're not gonna show it, but we need you to come and testify against Brother Love. That's when they're gonna start talking. And they're not gonna be talking in his favor. 250 cameras all over the house? Somebody got caught stealing a cookie out the cookie jar. When you that powerful, you didn't get that powerful without having 1 or 2 or maybe 3 ups on somebody. The people in power had gave that reign to Diddy, and Jay was next in line. So to separate him, when in fact, they may be two of the same, but because Jay-Z is low-key, that low-key sneaky shit, and Diddy is, and was, rambunctious, just out with it, it don't mean that they not two of the same. One just a little quieter with his shit.
What happened at the basketball game? When they ran into, you guys ran into Jay-Z?
They was talking amongst each other about their little white girls. They little skinny white girls.
And I mean, did Diddy always say negative things about Jay around you?
The time he was trying to get Ja Rule to go at Jay, yeah. He was.
Diddy is now working with the feds and helping them go after Jay-Z. His lawyers know that there is no other way for Diddy to escape prison, and they're trying to make a deal with the feds.
So now we have 2 people come out saying that Diddy was talking to the feds. Do you think that's true?
Whether it's true or not, and he might have been cooperative in some way, shape, or form, you don't get away with human trafficking unless you give up John Gotti or something like that, and that's not what happened here. I can tell you, Jesse, that this investigation's been going on for a long time, very closely held by HSI, so much so that even some of the agents on the raid a week ago today didn't know whose house they were raiding until they got there. That's how closely held this investigation.
Wow, because there could have been a tip.
Absolutely.
And there are allegations that he was paying law enforcement through his chief of security, which also happened to be Michael Jackson's chief of security.
I don't know if I buy into that. people in Diddy's situation like to have those involved in law enforcement close to them. But that doesn't mean they're taking payoffs. That doesn't mean they're doing big favors. They like that closeness. It's just like how Diddy was able to court Diageo or Estee Lauder. He was very successful in doing that, and that made him a lot of money and gave him credibility outside the hip-hop rap world. And that's what he was trying to do here, a lot like what Epstein did with very powerful political and business.
This criminal investigation isn't the only problem Diddy is dealing with. The FBI has been forcing Diddy to snitch. His release date is now being pushed back after officials allegedly discovered he was drinking inside the prison. Not only does this tank his chances of entering the drug rehab program he was counting on, but it may have just added over a year to his sentence. Diddy will do whatever it takes to get time off, even if it means snitching on his best friend.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs facing more time behind bars. His release date pushed back to June of 2028 instead of May of that same year. The news coming after reports of Combs drinking in prison, something he denies, after he was accepted into a rehab program in prison that could have reduced his sentence by up to a year. He's also been accused of making a prohibited three-way phone call from prison.
Combs' representative, Judah Engelmeyer, telling me by phone earlier today, Tom, that yes, a three-way call was made between one of Combs' lawyers, who did bring in another person on that call with Combs while he has been at Fort Dix, but that there was nothing improper about it. But again, that is not something that you were supposed to do at all, so those lawyers should have known better. As for drinking, he doubled down and said that Combs was not drinking and that, in fact, he's been admitted into this very specialized rehab program that Fort Dix offers is actually going to potentially lower his sentence. Yeah. He could be released earlier because of that. So they're saying he's done nothing wrong and that any reports that he has been drinking is completely not true.
Just last week, TMZ reported that Diddy was bragging to other inmates about a presidential pardon. He thought President Trump would pardon him and help him get away. Diddy's lawyer, Mark Garagos, said the same thing. This new investigation, however, makes that impossible. Even if Diddy gets pardoned for his current sentence, that's not going to help him get away from the investigation that just started.
Diddy could be a free man by the end of this week. We broke a story last night that Donald Trump is seriously considering commuting his sentence. And there has been a lot of fallout with our story.
By the way, commuting his sentence before he's even in a prison.
Right.
He's still at Brooklyn MDC waiting to find out which prison he's going to. But this is something that President Trump is considering. And the fact that he's considering it is causing a bit of an internal war at the White House, because not everybody in the administration thinks this is a good idea.
So we are told this, and this is coming from somebody high up in the White House. We broke that story, incidentally, that right after the sentencing, his legal team, Diddy's legal team, got in touch with somebody who had the president's ear, and that the president was looking at the paperwork.
And the president acknowledged that
like 2 days later.
Yeah, in the Oval Office.
2 days later. Yeah. So we now know that Trump is considering, we're told that he's kind of waffling, he's going back and forth on this, but there are staffers in the White House telling him, don't do it. So we put this story up last night.
I know is everything that I read in that article looked accurate.
Well, look, that's probably some relief to Diddy's team, you know. And
I don't know. I think they're moving ahead. I don't think anybody is counting on anything, and
right.
I think the reporting was accurate.
How did you hear he's faring since the sentencing?
I don't know. I mean, I hopefully we'll see him soon and find out.
I guess lastly, I would ask, what do you think his future looks like?
I have the utmost confidence in Sean. I think Sean will make a comeback, the likes of which people are not expecting. So I've watched him. I've known him for a long time. I have the utmost confidence in him.
In whatever sphere. I mean, he's done business, the music,
he's iconic
the fashion.
in a lot of ways, and I think he'll make a comeback. I'll leave it at that.
There are also rumors that the pardon Diddy kept bragging about might not be happening anymore. Trump was never exactly a fan of Diddy in the first place, and now with these drinking violations on his record, that's pretty much the worst thing Diddy could have done.
Sarah, after his trial, a lot of people said he got a legal victory. It looked like he was going to be on his way out in a couple of years. How far back does this set him now?
Well, we don't know yet, Tom, because you still have due process rights in prison, right? So there's going to be an incident report if he, in fact, was drinking or there's an allegation. Then he's going to go to hearing. And if he's found guilty of it, then there's going to be sanctions. The sanctions could be that he could essentially be thrown in the hole, the SHU, the special housing unit. He could lose his privileges, and he could lose at least a minimum of 40 days of time credits, which is big. And I want to say this. Drinking in a BOP facility is as serious as committing murder in a BOP facility.
Is it really?
Yeah, as of 2020, the BOP changed the rules and reclassified drinking as one of the most severe charges in custody. So this is really serious if he actually did it.
To make matters worse, civil cases are harder to beat, and if Diddy loses, the same evidence can also be used in Diddy's criminal investigations. The burden of proof for a civil suit is lower. And as long as the alleged victims can prove there is a chance Diddy was involved, it's likely that they're going to win. Why would a judge believe a criminal?
The basics of these cases. Combs is facing multiple civil cases. How's the burden of proof different in a criminal trial compared to a civil trial?
Yeah, so for criminal trial, you've probably heard it on a lot of like TV shows, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Amount of information that a regular, ordinary person with the duty of being on a jury would consider to be appropriate or important to determining whether or not a person had done something where there is no reasonable doubt to disagree with it. With a civil case, it's a much lower standard of a preponderance of the evidence, or in more layman's terms, more likely than not, the measurement we as attorneys typically use for that is 51%. And so for a civil case, you're just saying, hey, is there a 51% chance that Sean Combs allegedly committed these acts? If so, he would be liable. In the federal case, which was criminal, that was proof beyond a reasonable doubt, where he was found guilty of those two counts you mentioned earlier and is serving a 50-month sentence in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
This civil case might just be the final straw. The accuser, Jonathan Hay, originally filed his civil lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs in July 2025. In this anonymous filing, he claimed that the actual assault began after he was invited to a warehouse containing Biggie's old clothes. Once he got there, Diddy managed to get him alone, and this is where the crime took place.
I hear Diddy on his phone, and I didn't know if he was on FaceTime or whatever, but I could hear it sounded like, right? And so I'm just like, I'm not trying to stare over at him and look over at him and all that type of shit, right? So I'm just kind of minding my business, but also kind of in tune to what Diddy's doing. Everybody's out in the other, rooms. The music is playing loud, that we did. And it's just Diddy and I in this room with all of Biggie's clothes. Next thing you know, it's like I look over and it's like this dude is looking on his phone and he's like jerking off underneath one of the shirts. So I'm just kind of tripping, maybe he's scratching himself. Maybe he's, it can't be what's going on. But sure enough, that's what he's doing, because he's like, as he's getting into it, he's like, yo, bro, finish me off. And I'm just like, nah. So, he finishes off into one of Biggie's garments that he wore, and like a nut towel or something, and then he does his thing and he walks over and he throws that on my arm, and I'm just like, holy shit. And he's like, rest in peace, Biggie, and walks out and laughs, and I'm stunned because what the was that, right? And
so now the question isn't whether Jay-Z is involved, it's how long he can keep pretending he isn't. Because with Diddy desperate, cornered, and ready to trade names for freedom, the walls aren't just closing in on him. They're closing in on everyone who stood beside him, protected him, or benefited from the empire he helped build.